Timothy actually gave me a very good lead-in because our current business plan is very much in the future regionally oriented. But we have the advantage of having been up a 7-year learning curve, and we, like most pioneers, we have a few arrows in our back to show for it, but we're still here, and I have to say thriving as a business. I was interested by the Collier's comment on regional office markets. Absolutely true, there is no regional office market in investment terms. Having said that, it's a bit like the shoe salesman who went to the South Sea Islands. You know, he telex back and said there is no market here, they don't wear shoes. Now, you could argue that's the ultimate market if you have a branded product. But we have no intention to do regional offices. We have built around about 1 million square feet of Class B offices in Moscow. We have no vacancy rate. We carry the flag for Class B product. We will never, is a dangerous word, but we will never really be in the Class A market. We think there's too much competition. We think there's a lot of risk. And we also think there's less demand, actually. There's a lot of price sensitivity surrounding the office market. I have no argument with investors who would seek Class A assets and prime covenants, but I would regard that as more in the nature of financial bond investment rather than down in the dirt real estate business. We are developers. We started with a land bank and nothing else. Possibly one consent at the time. Timothy might know better than me, actually, as he was on the Long March as well. We've built 2 shopping malls in the regions. They've been hugely successful. One in Yaroslavl, one in Saratov. Very interesting from a kind of Western, non-Russian perspective. I had to be dragged kicking and screaming into working for a Russian-based business because my previous experience of Russia was a 3-week prospecting visit in 1993, and I was quite happy to leave as quickly as possible, with all due respect to Nicola. However, I went back, and I think the main message I would give is that you have to get on the plane, you have to go and look, because if you just read the UK or Western press, you will end up with a very, very jaundiced view of Russia. Is Russia a difficult place to do business? Yes. But it's difficult in the sense of you require a lot of persistence and patience and commitment. It's not difficult in the ways that I feared it might be. We're not constantly being asked to issue bribes or worried about the legal system. It's a huge market, there's a huge opportunity for developers. Frankly, we have to operate by Western governance, Western guidelines. If that makes us at a loss in terms of the competition, we don't really mind because there's plenty of opportunity there. To give you some perspective on the regions, our 2 shopping centres. One was opened 6 years ago. One was opened 2 years ago. They trade at 100% occupancy. In Saratov, which is an interesting city, you have around about 1.2 million people. It's a bit like Budapest. It has a city on 2 sides of the river. Huge catchment area. As with Yaroslavl, really no decent modern covered shopping. We've created what I would describe to a European and an American audience as very much first generation type retail. A couple of large anchors, a food court, unit shopping. We have around 100 tenants in Saratov. We have a waiting list of 95 retailers waiting to come in. In terms of yield, we are a developer. We retain where we can. In fact, we've retained everything we've built to date. So our equated yield on some of these properties is up in the high 20s rather than low double digits. We are also, unusually for a listed property company, a major residential developer. We have built high-end real estate in Russia, in Moscow, which frankly we won't do again. We will probably break even at best. In fairness, the market collapse between 2008 and virtually recently had a lot to do with that. The demand for 8,000 square foot houses at $2 million was not great in the Moscow suburbs. On the other hand, we're very much a mass market developer in St. Petersburg. We have one project in St. Petersburg, which is a 10-year project, 9,500 units with associated retail, schools, a sort of mini town, if you like. That's been very successful. Those of you who are old enough to remember it, it's a kind of Laurie Barrett type product from the 80s. I don't mean that disparagingly. It's highly cash generative. We've sold around about 1,500 units in the last 14 months, and we think that is a very interesting growth area. There is a huge renewal requirement in the residential sector and in other property sectors, but particularly in residential. There's a growing mortgage market. There is a surprisingly large amount of cash available from a growing group of middle-class investors, so that's interesting. Our core risk hedge is no different, I guess, to any other real estate business. We've retained our office and retail investment portfolio. We hope that, it is a fact that our objective, and we achieved today a situation where basically our investment portfolio covers our overheads and our interest outgoings, and our trading activities on the residential front provide additional cash flow and profit. I'd love to say that we're in a range of sectors by design, and it was a brilliant hedging strategy. I think truthfully we started with a land bank, and it was a question of what the appropriate uses were for those land plots. So I get quite evangelical about this. I'm hugely a believer in Russia and the future of Russia. I think you have to have a long-term perspective. I think you have to have people on the ground if you're going to be an investor in anything other than prime real estate, and you need to undoubtedly have a core of Russian employees.